Hello and welcome to TalksOnLaw. I'm Joel Cohen. Today we're discussing brain injuries from car accidents, and to get the legal take, we're joined remotely by Los Angeles-based personal injury attorney Bill Karns. Bill, welcome to TalksOnLaw.
Thanks, Joel. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Bill, we're talking about brain injuries as they relate to car accidents.
Sure.
Why don't we talk through what you've seen in terms of what in a car accident frequently leads to a brain injury?
Sure. When we get a new case and we get photos of the crash, that kind of tells us a lot about what happened in the crash. And if the impact is severe enough, we can kind of recreate what the body is doing inside the car. In the rear end crash, for example, if it's big enough, the back of your head is going to snap back and it's going to hit that headrest. In a side impact crash, your head may whip to the side and hit what's called the B pillar, or that side pillar there, or the window. You could have a rollover and your head could hit the roof of your car. Your head could hit the steering wheel. It could hit, even the airbag deployment can, cause that kind of impact to your head. But when we're analyzing whether there's a traumatic brain injury result of a crash, in terms of the mechanics of the crash, we're looking for a big impact that would cause some type of traumatic impact to the skull.
I've seen a car after an accident where the windshield's cracked from the passenger's head or from the driver's head.
Awful. And what happens in these crashes that a lot of people don't understand, like why do I have a brain injury after a car crash? And they need to understand what's going on. Your brain is free floating in your skull, and it can kind of move around in your skull. And your skull, of course, it's bone. It's very, very hard. So if you're driving along and something happens and you hit your head like this, your brain doesn't just stop. Your brain continues to move forward, and your brain will impact the front of your skull, on the inside of your skull. And on a rebound, it even goes back and hits the back of your skull. So you can have a brain injury to the back of your brain, even though you hit originally the front of your skull.
Bill, they were talking about physical trauma. Another cause of brain injuries is whiplash. Maybe you can explain that.
Same concept, actually. What we're really talking about here, it's been referred to in the medical community as coup-contra-coup injuries. So when your head is moving fast, basically, and whipping and hitting like the headrest and whipping back and then forward, and your brain is floating around in your skull. So it's these impacts that your brain has to the skull on the inside of your cranium that are causing these injuries.
One of your jobs in a case involving a brain injury is demonstrating the cause, demonstrating the impact. What are some of the challenges that you've faced or that would be unique to this type of case?
So traumatic brain injury is sometimes impossible to see. We have limitations in medical imaging. If I break my leg and I show you the x-ray, you can see it. Oh, there's the bone. It's clearly not together. It's broken. It's fractured. Aha, there it is. You could have severe traumatic brain injury severe in terms of how it changes your life, but it might not show up on a CT scan or an MRI of your brain. And the reason is because when you get a brain injury, you have a neuron, which is basically your brain cell. You've got about 100 billion of them. And they talk to other brain cells by basically grabbing onto axons, which are like little things in neurons that reach out so neurons can talk to other neurons. And this is all extremely microscopic. And we don't have the actual ability sometimes to see damage to these neurons, damage to these axons, especially on the individual scale. MRI imaging is getting better at seeing traumatic brain injury with various sequencing and kind of complex medical and radiological advances, but it's still tough. So the challenge that we have is showing a traumatic brain injury that we all know is there, but you just can't see on a medical imaging. That's the greatest challenge, in my view, in proving traumatic brain injury cases to jurors.
Well, Bill, since we have a lawyer here joining us, and you mentioned that these cases can be both difficult to show injury, and in some cases, a person may not even know they have a brain injury. What's the statute of limitations? What's the the outside time limit after an accident where an individual can bring a case?
So in California, you have 2 years to bring a lawsuit. But if your lawsuit's against a governmental entity, like the police or basically someone on the job who works for any kind of governmental entity, be it state or local or city, the statute is 6 months before you have to file a claim. There's another caveat you should know about with respect to traumatic brain injury and statute of limitations. If you're incapacitated, in other words, that your injury is so bad that you can't even take care of yourself, don't know what's going on from a mental cognition standpoint, potentially, it's not a lock, but potentially you can get the statute of limitations extended. And also, if you're a minor, the statute of limitations is extended until you're 18.
So, Bill, with the 2-year statute of limitations, I guess I have a follow-up for you. Let's say you're in a car accident, you're injured, perhaps even a head injury, but you weren't aware of it, and you sue for perhaps a broken elbow, and then 2.5 years later you realize, well, this brain injury thing is going to be incredibly challenging, incredibly expensive, and it's going to change your life in a way that you hadn't predicted.
Well, if you have already sued and you've already settled that case, and then you want to reopen the case to allege brain injury, you're going to have a real hard time doing that. Most releases, when you settle a case, there's language in there that basically you waive any and all claims, including future claims, and you waive statutory protections that allow you to bring future claims. So, once you settle a case, you're pretty much done. That's why you really got to check in with yourself. If you think you've got a traumatic brain injury, or you have these weird symptoms consistent with traumatic brain injury, you got to tell your lawyers, you got to tell your doctors so they can make the claim.
Bill Karns is an attorney in Los Angeles at the law firm Karns and Karns. Bill, thanks for the time.
Thank you, Joel. Appreciate it.